What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Sun Belt Syndicate. As you can see, or you will hear in a second, for those of you doing the audio only, we have a new face and a new voice that's going to be joining us tonight. So welcome to the show, Mr. TJ O'Sullivan, or is your nickname Sully across the board? That's pretty much what everyone calls you?
Pretty much what everybody calls me. But can you guys hear me okay? That's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
Yeah, we got you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. That was you guys have no idea the buzzer beater that I just had to get on to the show. I'm trying to plug in my mic and make sure everything is working okay. And I jump in and the intro music's hitting and I'm like, all right, here we go.
I was like, he's probably going to cut it close. I was like, Zach, we've been doing this, just me and you the whole time. Like, we'll be fine. We'll jump him in whenever he gets over here. And you jumped in right in the middle of the intro, like you said. And as soon as I added you to the screen, it went from black to seeing you. And I was like, all right, there we go. Perfect time.
Come on. We know what broadcast quality is all about. We're here on time. Let's go.
There we go. There's nothing better. And now we have a stronger representation for the Coastal Carolina brand, team, sports, whatever you want to call it, as you and Zach are both, well, Zach's going to soon to be a graduate, but you guys are both Coastal Carolina fans there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Shant's up always. That's a heck of a school down there in Conway.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Zach, what's it like down there right now? I know I was talking to TJ earlier today. Said the pollen's usually not a big deal down there in Conway because it never gets super cold. But is it bad this year, or is it?
No, it's been awful the last few years. Like, everything is just yellow. Literally everything. All the kids are walking into class sneezing and coughing. It's awful.
It must have just missed me. I can't remember anything like that. But I guess you guys have it bad this year.
It's been like that probably the last 2-3 years. So, I mean, it's starting to die down a little bit. It was like last week, it was really bad, but now it's starting to get a little better.
Nice. Well, it's definitely bad right here in the Triangle area of North Carolina, but I don't know. TJ was saying it wasn't. Or it's starting to creep up north, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we go through these 2 week on, 2 week off stints. When it gets warmer, it starts to pollinate, gets cold, everything goes away, but we're just in hell for about 90 days. So, we're dealing with it.
Nice. We got Ben already commenting. I'll put his comment up when we get to the coaching aspect. I'll just put it up now. He says, I keep hearing it could be an in-house hire for A-State in T-Butters or someone outside the conference. So if it's an in-house hire, then that would not be somebody other than T-Butters. But I did see Coach Hodgkins recommend him, said there was nobody better than him to be his replacement. So we'll see. We've seen that technique used. We referenced it on the baseball show the other night. That we saw that with Sean Clark's hire for App State. I don't think it was a terrible hire, really. Did formidable for years, but ultimately you have to make some successes in order to keep your job in this day and age. So we'll see if that type of thing works out. But we are here to continue to talk about basketball and give you guys a season review. As we know, the men's side of thing is now done, over, completely finished. We do have two women's teams to shout out as they continue on towards their hopes at postseason glory. I kind of segmented those number one teams. As we know, we had 4 regular season champions, or co-champions, if you will. So South Alabama, JMU, Troy, and Arkansas State kind of get the shine here in this opening graphic, but we will get to some of the postseason stuff here. So we know A-State was the representative for the NIT. Well, technically, we were supposed to have 2 representatives for the NIT, but South Alabama was toyed with, right, fellas?
Yeah, they got completely screwed over.
Which is awful. But yeah, because when you look back at this one here, this first matchup, it's A-State versus St. Louis. There's that logo that you're seeing. Arkansas State beat them 103-78 in an opening round game. And as we know, South Alabama, Arkansas State, co-champions, okay, tied to the top of the belt. you don't think South Alabama could have come in here and done some damage? I think it's pretty obvious that they could have at least won an opening round game against somebody. I'm not saying everybody.
You look at the team that, got in over them. They got absolutely demolished in the first round as well. So, it's not a good look for the NIT.
No. I had some fun with that on the Twitterverse. So I was giving them a little bit of a hard time. I didn't want to get blocked, right? Because Arkansas State is still in the NIT. Tried to be a little diplomatic, but also be like, all right, guys, come on. Should not have fumbled the bag this poorly. But they did. Unfortunately, South Alabama was left out of all postseason because it would have been okay to some extent if, the NIT thing got fumbled, didn't work out. At least you're in the CBI. At least you're, whatever.
The CBI shortened their field just because who was the team that got in over them? Like UC, one of the California teams.
Riverside, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. But they shortened the field because they pulled out of the CBI to go to the NIT. And instead of adding another team in the CBI, they just shortened the field, which was crazy to me as well.
Which also doesn't make sense. And maybe TJ can speak to this because I know he's done some postseason coverage for basketball. But I believe that you kind of pay your way in to participate in those postseason events. So if South Alabama was willing and able to accept something like that, I would have thought you could have found someone else to partner with them, right? TJ, do you know details on that?
Yeah, from what I understand about the postseason play, if it's not the NCAA tournament, if it's not the NIT, you pay your way in, and that kind of goes into, if I'm not mistaken, a prize pool for the winner. But, to me, I don't know the details on the South Alabama side. I know that they absolutely deserved, I think, to be in the NIT. But I don't know. I don't know what the details with that, if they were willing to pay, if they weren't. From what it sounded like from head coach Richie Riley, it sounded like they wanted to play postseason ball. So, it's a shame. I think that they had a heck of a season. They should be playing right now.
Yeah. And we talked about this on Monday's show, again, baseball shows, but the parallels are the same across football, basketball, and baseball. Any more with the portal, and we'll get to that aspect here shortly as well. Any more with the portal, when you have a really good season, as South Alabama had, you must go fully in and all in because you don't know who you're going to have on your roster next year. You don't know if you're going to have your coach again next year. So that's why it's such a big deal that they were left out and screwed over like this. If it's the old school NCAA where, hey, you return 4 starters next year and your coach isn't going to go anywhere, that's a little bit different of a feel. But you just feel like you got wronged and now you don't really have a shot to correct it because your team's going to look, likelihood vitally different next year.
Yeah,
and that's just one. Right?
I know that we're going to talk about the portal a little bit later, but that is, you're absolutely right. Like the portal can, for the G5 especially, it can make or break you. You can turn around a kind of like what Coastal Carolina did back in 2021-22, where they no recent basketball success, and then all of a sudden we pick up Rudy Williams, Vince Cole, a couple other guys, and they're hosting the final for the Classic 4 tournament, another one of those pay-to-play postseason tournaments. So, like, the portal can be a blessing and a curse, but I don't want to get too far into that because I know that we're talking a lot about the portal later.
Yeah, we will definitely have our time and moment there. So we'll round back into A-State. Ben wants to give a little shout out to the A-State women's bowling team heading to the NCAA tournament for this 17th straight season. I will say, and I agree with this because I've seen people say it, why don't we have more teams or more schools participate in bowling? It would seemingly be a relatively inexpensive sport to sponsor. But whatever, A-State is crushing it when it comes to bowling. So, hey, congrats to them. Hopefully they can go on and do good things there yet again. I think they got to the final the other year and just dropped short of getting a championship. So that'll be interesting to see if they can do that type of thing again. North Texas was the team that A-State got matched up against in the second round after they defeated Furman in the first round. This game, well, first of all, did either of you catch this game at all live?
I did not catch this game, no.
No,
okay.
Watching the tournament.
I was away from the house, but got home for almost the whole second half. And it was a great game to watch. However, it wasn't quite what I'd say back and forth the whole time. At least in the respect to the fact it's a 2 or 3 point game. There was points where it was 7, 8. I think it almost got to like 9 or 10 double digits a couple times. And you're just like, man, if they don't get something quick here, the Red Wolves are going to be out of it. And North Texas obviously was playing this game at home, which was obviously a big advantage. A-State comes down with, I don't know, under a minute left, scores a bucket. I think there's 18 seconds or something. It was very little time left. North Texas draws up a great play, gets a heck of a shot off at the buzzer to beat A-State. So A-State's season comes to an end by, one shot at the very end of a game. Otherwise, they could still be playing, tomorrow or tonight. I don't know how the NIT is laid out at this point. I think there's multiple games across different nights. But, it's close. One of our best teams had a real shot at getting farther in the NIT, and hopefully that can happen in the future and gain some more respect nationally, because I know that's what we need. But Ben said he watched that. Oh, I know you watched that one, Ben. That's not a surprise, man. You'd watch these guys play, I don't know, across the country at 5 a.m. in the morning. I know you would, so I've got no concerns there. But we also have to touch on the Troy Trojans, our team, our representative for the NCAA tournament. I'm sure you guys caught at least some of this one. I know when it's tournament time, no one watches one full game start to finish unless you're a very big Troy or Kentucky fan. But how much of this one did you see? Did you feel like it was – at halftime it was a close game. What was it, 6 points or 7 points at the half?
Mm-hmm.
Zach, did you – yeah. Zach, you take in a lot of this one or jumping around a lot?
I watched most of this game other than obviously commercial breaks. I turned it off, maybe missed a minute or two after those or before those or whatever. But yeah, I watched it. They're a close game for about 30 minutes. And then Troy just went on a little scoring lull, and you can't do that against Kentucky because they're going to score the ball like crazy. And Troy was playing good defense for 30 minutes as well. But they were just too talented and too big for Troy towards the end.
Yeah. TJ, what did you see out of this game?
I caught most of this game as well. I was impressed, especially at the start, with the way that Troy didn't play Kentucky's game. They didn't play to Kentucky. They actually played their own style of basketball, which I think you see a lot of mid-majors. Like when you're going up against a blue blood like Kentucky or a big basketball brand, you see them change their style. You see them kind of play on their heels a little bit. No, they were looking for backdoor cuts. They were looking to attack the rim, which I liked. But, sometimes it just comes down to bigger, faster, stronger. And that's just kind of what happened in this one. This Mark Pope led Kentucky team. This isn't your dad's Kentucky team. It feels like this is the revival in Lexington. So, it's a tough opponent to go up against in your first game. But they played really well. And I don't want this to sound like they didn't belong there at all. They absolutely did. Just sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other team. Oway was crazy in this one. So, you just got to tip your cap and, heck of a season for Troy.
Yeah. And the one thing that I was surprised about going in statistically, we saw Kentucky kind of the opposite of Troy, right? They could score more points. Their defense wasn't great. Or am I getting that backwards now? I'm almost forgetting.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. But they really stepped up the defensive game against Troy and made it really, really hard for them to kind of get the easier buckets. I know that nothing really comes easy, but you know what I mean? The less challenged shots that they probably got against some Sunbelt opponents were a whole lot more challenging to get and see against a team like Kentucky. TJ, to your point, bigger, faster, stronger than what their typical opponent was all season long.
And that kind of led to that scoring lull that Zach was talking about, because after a certain point, Troy wasn't having a whole lot of problems getting to the bucket, but once Kentucky clamped down and they just, they're not going to let them get past them. There's a hand on every single ball that tries to get inside. And then Troy's trying to force shots early in the shot clock from the perimeter. And, that's the logical next step, is try and space the floor so you can get those looks again, but they just never fell. And, like I said, you just got to tip your cap sometimes.
Yeah. And I think, as Zach and I talked about throughout most of the season too, I mean, at least mention it a few times, doesn't have that many great 3-point shooting teams in this conference. A-State was probably, if they weren't number one, they were real far up there, mainly because of Pinion and what he was able to do throughout the season. But Troy never really had that dominant 3-point shooter on the team this year. And when you can't hit the threes and get, like you said, TJ, outside that perimeter and start challenging them from that point and make them respect that part of your game, it's always going to be a little bit tougher to win this. I mean, the other thing we can't forget is, Kentucky has another number beside their name. It's not just the seed they were for the tournament. They're also a nationally ranked top 25 team, probably better than number 18, right? I mean, what we've seen them do so far against the Illini as well in the next round. So a very good team, a Kentucky team that may be heating up at the right time to go on maybe a good little run here. We'll talk about the lack of mid-majors left here in a while too. But yeah, that wraps it up for the men's side of things. Again, we didn't really cover the women throughout most of the season. It's just so much to do for men's and women's sports with 14 teams to talk about. But we do want to give them a shout out when they're continuing to play in March, as we know that's not easy to do, as we just talked about. So James Madison's women's team will go again in the WBIT. They somehow didn't get a bid to the NIT and somehow also didn't get a bid to the NCAA. Debate that all you want with their record. But they will play Belmont on Thursday, and that is the quarterfinals of the WBIT. So they win that one. They're sitting pretty with one of the last couple teams there at a chance to win it. With what their season was like and how well they did overall, that wouldn't really surprise me. How much do you guys pay attention to the women's side of things throughout the season, or at least kind of looking at standings or something?
Yeah, I mean, I pay attention to the standings a little bit. I also pay attention to Coastal just because obviously I go there. They were really good this year, so
Yep.
tried to pay attention to them a little bit more than I usually would, but I didn't really pay attention to much women's basketball in the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of the Troy women's basketball program. They have been really good for a really long time, or at least in this decade. They always put a competitive team out there, and then last year with Kiki Jefferson, JMU was really good as well. So, the two teams that I would expect if I was just keeping tabs, they're the ones that are continuing to play.
Yeah. Kiki, do you remember where she transferred to, like a power program too, didn't she?
She did. I don't. Is it Louisville? I honestly, I'm not positive.
Okay, but yeah, I know that, like you said, that means you're pretty talented, right? You don't
I'll do a check on that.
There you go. While you're doing a check on that, we will mention the Troy women's team in the WNIT in the Super 16, as they call it, right? You can't call it the Sweet 16 because I'm sure that's trademark or something. You found it, TJ?
So first of all, boy, am I good. It was Louisville.
Nice.
And then she was drafted by the Lynx in 2024. So
Wow.
she's a WNBA player. She is currently a free agent, but that's a Sun Belt representative right there.
Yeah. Well, hey, if there's any support or ideas we can give her, go play overseas and get that money because apparently they play the women's teams and the women players over there a lot better than they pay them here in the States. So go over there and do your thing and get some shine and some money and come back and play in the WNBA again. I'm sure it's a distinct possibility that she's probably looking at. They actually match up with North Texas. So as you can see, North Texas men's and women's basketball programs looking pretty good, both in the postseason. So we'll see if Troy can get a little revenge for A-State there. Totally unrelated, but the fact that they're just playing North Texas again, we'll have to see how that one goes. All right, so and shout out Ben saying that the A-State women's coach got a contract extension, but we got
to bring him on for as an A-State insider. He's got everything right now. He's got bowling, he's got contract extensions.
Oh yeah, he's all over A-State. We got to get some other people to comment sometimes because he's just dominating the feed, which is fine. I'm totally good with that. We love Ben and what he brings to the show, and we appreciate all the insight that he does bring. But he doesn't want to talk about the UConn A-State game, and I'm sure, TJ, you being up there in that area, there was a little talk about that first-round game, and unfortunate for Sunbelt fans, a first-round exit for the Lady Red Wolves.
It's Paige Beckers. That's all I can really say.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, so we have in front now the coaches poll preseason for the 2024-25 basketball season on the men's side of things. To the surprise of no one, including Zach and myself, likely TJ, but I guess I have to confirm if you would have thought the same or not. But Arkansas State came into this season as the coach's favorite, my favorite, Zach's favorite, and to me it was pretty clear. TJ, were you kind of in tuned enough to see that Arkansas State was a pretty easy favorite to pick going into this season?
I mean, for me, it was between Arkansas State and James Madison. I wanted to see – I was a little less on them just because with Terrence Edwards Jr. transferring out, wasn't sure how they were going to fill in that scoring. But, Arkansas State, to nobody's surprise, like you said.
Yeah, and actually, Zach was right there with you. Zach, you had JMU second in the preseason poll, as did the coaches. So what was your thought process on that? Because obviously they were replacing a lot. Obviously, Terrence Edwards Jr., as TJ had said as well. But why did you have them so high coming into this season?
Yeah, I mean, they lost their coach to Vandy, and then they lost – I think they brought two guys back. But when I just looked at their roster, I thought, like, man, this team is, like, extremely talented from top to bottom, maybe the most talented in the league, I think I said at one point. And I knew that with a new coach and completely new team, it was going to take some time to get used to. And I think I said, I mean, towards the end of the year, they might struggle towards the beginning of the year, but towards the end of the year, they were really going to be rolling. And that's kind of what happened a little bit. They kind of made a late push and kind of stayed in that title hunt. So, yeah, I mean, I just thought they were like maybe the most talented team, and I thought Spradlin's a good coach. So,
yeah, and like you said, to no surprise, at the end of the season, that's where they ended up, right there, technically 1 and 2. I guess let's see if I can pull up the standings here. We can reference that. Obviously, those top 4 teams, all 13 and 5, technically, if you want to say the tiebreaker. That's why South Alabama's at the top there. But all relatively close with all getting over or at 20 wins. Obviously, it looks like a couple teams, the postseason games got added in there too. But, yeah, that's kind of the final look there. This is – I was pretty far off. I had JMU in 4th, which, I mean, I guess when you go back into the standings and you say if there was further tiebreakers, maybe I could have been close in that regard, but I had some big time misses. So
like
I'll
that team
go
at
ahead.
the bottom down there.
Which one?
That team at the very bottom.
Yeah, they did end up at the bottom, and I think Zach, yes, you had them at 14 as well. The coaches, you guys all knew what you were talking about. I thought this ragtag crew of players in what was Keith Richards' final season, as we'll talk about too, as well, could just kind of come out of nowhere and have kind of some success. They had some European flavor, I think it's just one player they had from Africa, right?
I believe so.
I think at least one. So I just thought it was a weird mix, but if it worked, it could work really well because you've got different play styles that some of the guys maybe not so used to. I had him in 6th place, so that one was a little bit wrong. And we can all agree that we all doubted incorrectly South Alabama. The coaches actually had them in 11th. Zach and I had them in 13th and 14th. I had them last. You had them second to last. So we were wrong. We were hard on ourselves immediately once we started figuring out that we were off on that one. But I think that was another one though, right? We just didn't know what the makeup of that team would be after what we had seen last year and what they brought in. I don't know if we felt comfortable enough to say that they were going to be one of the better teams in the conference. So full credit to those guys. I think 2 teams that were big disappointments. I mean, I think they're right there in the middle at 4 and 5, which is the Cajuns and Southern Miss. TJ, I know with your experience covering Sun Belt Conference in the past, those two teams are probably ones that were relevant when you were looking at basketball standings and predicted to be pretty high, and both ended up towards the bottom instead. Is that a little bit of a surprise to you?
It is a surprise. I mean, from what I remember from my beginning covering the Sun Belt is, Louisiana, they are always playing scrappy defense. They're a physical team. They, it doesn't matter who's on the court. They're scrappy. They're going to get the win. And that just didn't pan out this year. Southern Miss, I was a little more surprised with, though, because usually they put out a really, really competitive team. And, I think everyone was a little shocked. I mean, so those two, but really, I just want to give more flowers to South Alabama, because I know that last round ball roundup, I listened to it, and I know that you had the Troy boys on, and they were a little, I will say,
a little harsh
on South Alabama. There's a rivalry there, so I'll let it slide. But all good and fun in the in-state rivalry. But I mean, Richie Riley did a phenomenal year. He had a phenomenal year this year. And I think that picking them 11th was a little disrespectful to him, being that, this year with their 20-plus wins, it's the third 20-plus win season of his 7-year tenure there. And he's had no losing seasons. His only losing season in 9 years as a head coach was his very first year at Nichols, where he went 14-17. So, I mean, I wouldn't have doubted Richie Riley personally to pick them 11th. I think, 6th is probably fair. But that's 2020 hindsight. I'm not going to critique the coaches poll, but I thought that they deserved to be a little higher.
Well, you can critique ours because we had them in last and second to last. So there's that.
Well, I will critique that. That's disrespectful.
Yeah, there you go. Zach, any ones that surprised you, or any ones that you felt you were giving yourself a round of applause for here, or anything?
I mean, a team that kind of shocked us both was Georgia Southern as well. I mean, that's a team that we both picked to be like a sleeper team to even like compete to win the conference, and they had a really down year. So that's probably one. And then another one, looking at my standings a little bit, I mean, I think everything else is pretty much we've covered. I mean, Louisiana, obviously, with the big loss beginning of the year, sucked, but that's a team that we thought was going to do better. And then you said Southern Miss, with all the talent that they had, we thought that they would be really good.
Yeah, I mean, I had Southern Miss as second place. I thought I had the player of the year coming from that team, and Andre Curbelo, and he was suspended from the team, kicked off the team completely. All kinds of storylines and fodder coming from that side of things throughout the season. It was just turmoil down there. I half surprised Jay Ladner still has a job, to be honest, and I don't think it's necessarily his fault. But with what transpired and what they were expected to do this year, it wouldn't have shocked me either, right? I mean, everybody's leash is a little shorter than it used to be, I feel like, right now. We can flip a whole team and a whole roster real quick these days. We don't have to wait for a coach to prove himself for 6 or 7 years anymore. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad he didn't, lose his job or anything, but I could have seen it. I mean, they pulled the cord out on the football side of things pretty quick this year, so it wouldn't have shocked me to see them ultimately do it on the basketball side of things. Was anybody surprised with where ODU was kind of to start the year? I think Zach and I were pretty surprised by that. At one point being in first place very early on, but they ultimately ended up, where did we go here? Ended up in ninth.
10th.
Is that what?
10th.
10th. I'm sorry, you're right. So yeah, that rough start looks pretty bad when you look back and see that their overall record was just 15-20, but they were a hotter team towards the end of the season than they really were throughout most of the rest of the season. And maybe a team that we'll get to our way too early predictions here at the end, and maybe a team that could be standing around there. I think at this point we'll jump over to the coaching changes. If you guys got any other notes here, you could also share them once we go to the portal aspect too, because there'll be plenty of things to talk about in that respect. But yeah, we've got some coaching changes. As I said, one that didn't happen, but we've had some that did. This one was were you guys kind of surprised by the one with A-State and Brian Hodgkins moving on already?
Not really. Just because Hodgson, he comes in last year, he has a good year last year. This year he continues that success. He's had a phenomenal start at A-State, and I think that it was just kind of right. I'm going to change that. It was the right situation, I guess, the perfect storm. And I say that I want to change around my wording a little bit because South Florida, with their head coach passing away in October, that's obviously not a perfect storm, but that's a program that cares deeply about their basketball team. It's a tragic loss, absolutely out of nowhere. And they just needed, I think, another, just like Amir Abdur-Rahim, who was a younger coach, one of the promising young minds in college basketball. You got to go get someone that kind of matches that energy, someone that matches that mold. And Hodgson, just started at A-State, but making the step up, I think that was the right move for them. I think they got a good one. And I think that he sort of embodies what that program's looking for right now.
Yeah. Zach?
No, I mean, he pretty much covered it. I mean, it's a great coach going to a program that really needs a young, good head coach after the passing at the beginning of the season. But I heard a rumor that maybe Hodgson he's still pretty linked to Syracuse. So, maybe if he has a good year and Red Autry has a down year again, then maybe he jumps ship after a year. I don't know. And then I also heard a rumor that maybe he'd be connected to Oklahoma, say Porter Moser left. But like you said, he's going to a program that cares about basketball a ton. So I think it's a perfect fit.
Nice. You hearing anything on that aspect, TJ? Is that a surprise to hear his name? With
I knew you. Yeah, I knew you were coming to me. I have no idea. I have not a clue.
for those that don't know, TJ was very involved with Syracuse basketball for a whole season, right? From start to finish, right?
Yeah, start to finish. I was the ACC reporter for CBB Review with a special emphasis on Syracuse. Got to cover Autry during his debut season or his first season. But yeah, it was a great time. Autry's seat, I would say, after this season is warm. They're committed to him for another year, and I think that's the right move. 3 years, I think, is where you can start passing judgment on a coach. He's got a great recruiting class coming in. I think that he just needs to figure some stuff out on the offensive side. Not that this is a Syracuse podcast, but it's his seat's warm. I don't think Hodgson's making the move immediately, but that could be something in the future if they start jumping around with head coaches.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And like you guys said, this is a school that cares about basketball and also is probably one of the closest schools to be primed to a power jump if the opportunity were to exist for them. So it makes sense that they were willing and able to spend that kind of money immediately. Also saved them a couple, $100,000, which in today's day and age doesn't feel like that much. But had they waited until after April to try and steal him away, they would have been paying a cool $1 million compared to the $900,000 they had to pay for him. So, smart move for them, probably all the way around, like you guys had already mentioned. All right, Keith Richards, this was probably the worst kept secret. Zach, you were the one who broke this news before the season even started, that he was likely on his way out after this one wrapped up, right?
Yeah, there were some rumors going around right before the season started that maybe he takes like the Tony Bennett route and retires right before the season just to get one of his assistants a job. But he stuck around about halfway through the season, announced his retirement, and they stayed in the house and signed assistant head coach Phil Cunningham.
Yeah, as we could see the graphic there, I don't know. You know enough to say whether you like that hire or not for ULM?
I think it's a decent hire. It's a guy that was at Troy and was solid at Troy. I'm not going to say he was Scott Cross, but he had some good years, and he was. That's what he was looking for when he came to ULM. He came to ULM to hopefully get the head coaching job, and he got what he wanted. So, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Maybe I I was hoping they would go like a little younger, maybe go like an up and coming like D2 or D3 head coach. I think that's a spot that ULM should have been in, but I mean, they chose Phil Cunningham.
Yeah. I want to get to this because I don't want to get too far away from it. And maybe we don't have that many great ideas. Maybe we do. Samuel's asking, do we think there will be a coaching change at Texas State? I know the little background that I can give is I see quite a few Texas State fans, right? They've tried to turn the corner here in football, and it seems like they've kind of done that, right? They've got who knows how many invitations that their fan base has said they've been extended to the Pac-12, and we'll see if ever that comes to fruition. But if they want to be at that level, it does make sense that they commit a little bit more to turning a program around. Texas State has been kind of perennially up towards the top of the Sun Belt, but in these last year or two, not quite so much. So I don't know if either one of you have thoughts on if they will or who it could be, but I'll open up the floor. I guess we'll start with Zach, just in case you have anybody kind of listed or somebody you had heard of possibly for the Texas State route or any rumblings at all.
I mean, I don't think they're going to make one at Texas State. Maybe, like you said, if they go to the Mountain West or if they go to the Pac-12, maybe that makes Coach Johnson's seat a little hotter, quicker. Because, I mean, the last few years have kind of been a little disappointing in their standards. So, I mean, I don't think they're going to make a change, and if they do, it's going to have to be soon because the portal's open.
Yeah, TJ, I don't know how much you know about the Texas State. I mean, unfortunately for us over here on the East Coast, they're the literal farthest Sunbelt school from all of us. So it's not like we are close enough into their inner circle to really know a lot of detail. But I don't know. Again, Texas State, probably a school that you had seen and heard the name of a lot when you were covering Coastal down here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the details of what they're looking for or if they're looking at all. I don't think that I think Zach kind of hit it. I don't think that they would be looking for anybody unless that change was inevitable. You know, once you make the change that you want to take a step up to the Mountain West or the Pac-12 or what have you, you know, especially the Mountain West, that is just last year, 8 bids to the NCAA tournament. That's a competitive conference. I got in trouble with some of the Mountain West fan bases for what I said about the 8 bids, but it's a conference that is incredibly, incredibly competitive. And if you are going to compete in that conference with some of the most hostile environments in college basketball, you're going to need somebody who knows how to handle themselves in those situations. So, you know, that's a decision to be made when the time comes. I don't think there's going to be anything right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I haven't heard strong enough rumblings that I think anything is imminent. It's mainly the voice of the fan base, right? And we know that sometimes that's powerful enough when you got some big donors who agree, and other times it means nothing. So at this point, I'd say there's not much to it. I agree with these two guys. But yes, maybe a short lease going into next year, especially if there's some kind of invitation extended and accepted moving forward in that sense. All right. Well, there's one more coaching change that we do know of for sure. That's Aquinas White over there at Louisiana. And Zach, I know you had heard some rumblings of this one happening before it happened. So what can you tell us about Mr. White down there being the newest man for the Cajuns?
Yeah, I mean, he knows Louisiana. He was a longtime AAU coach there. He's a Tulane assistant, and he was an assistant under Kelvin Sampson at Houston for a very long time. So I think this is a good hire. I mean, based on the press conference too, everyone loves him. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. But yeah, I think it's a guy that knows the state well. I think he'll do good in this conference, and he was due for a head coaching job eventually, even if it wasn't at Louisiana.
Nice. TJ, are you familiar with Aquinas at all? For any chance?
Not that familiar. But you know, I think that, like you said, the program needed a change, a couple down years. And I think that this now, you know, just kind of like what Coastal Carolina is trying to do with Justin Gray. You're just trying to get some new blood in there, somebody that has some promise in a league that, you know, historically down for basketball, but, you know, trying to increase their national prominence. So you get some new blood in there and see what happens.
Agreed. I like the youth movement and the coaching aspect. I mean, to me, it makes sense because you are going after young guys who want to connect with their coach, right? I mean, the Keith Richards of the world, they're going to be fewer and farther between, I feel like, because again, in this new day and age, you have to have success and it has to be continued. You're not going to, I don't see a lot of coaches lasting 10 years or more anymore. I don't think that's going to happen, especially at one institution. I'm not saying they can't be a head coach, right? That's why I'm saying it. They'll either jump up or lose the spot. So
it's just a volatile. It's just a volatile position,
Yes.
especially in basketball. Not just at the mid-major level. It is with the portal, which we'll talk about, and with NIL. If you can't assemble a team and turn around a season in a year or two, which was never the case years ago, but if you can't do it now with the resources that they have, the kind of just falls on the coach and they become the scapegoat and they make a change. So it's volatile. You need to have success pretty much right away. And then you need to cash in on your opportunities as soon as you get them.
Oh yeah. Ben is saying he's okay with the Achin move as long as they torch Memphis, because he's not a Memphis basketball fan, which makes sense. As an A-State fan, you're not going to be a fan of anything Memphis does or has to say. Okay, look at this. We got one player in the portal for Marshall, not as the conference. We have a lot to cover. But we will start off with the one that is the smallest portal. And Zach's going to kind of make sure that we're aligned here, because there was a lot of graphics to try and grab for this and make sure there's not last-minute movement, and I may have missed some along the way. But as we know right now, Zach, is it still factually correct right now that Kyson is the only Marshall player in the portal at this moment?
Yep.
Interesting. Clearly and far away the smallest group from any Sunbelt institution at this point, by the way. I tried to order it from smallest group to largest group, and there are some really large groups when we get here to the end. But I don't know. What do you think about this move here? I'm going to pull it up. He's a guard. Didn't play a lot this year. Do you know much more about Pruitt?
No, he got an injury a few games into the season and redshirted. So just looking for a new opportunity.
Okay. Makes sense then, because I think Marshall, even more so than that ODU run when they got a little bit warm to end the season, they have a crew that sticks together going into next year. They're gonna probably be one of the more prominent teams again at the top of this conference. TJ, any thoughts on Marshall as a whole, or this player specifically for whatever reason?
Not Marshall as a whole, not with Kyson at all. I just have an overarching thing that I wanted to throw out there. I don't know if we're going team by team or if I can just come out and say this. This is got to be one of the biggest blows to a conference this season in terms of portal movement in the portal era. I mean, I got all of my information from 24/7. So if they're, I actually didn't have Kyson Pruitt in for Marshall. I did not know he was in the portal. So he's the only team that I actually have 0 on my prep. But when you're looking at the all Sun Belt awards, the honorees, there's not a single honoree that's coming back. There's whether it be them graduating or transferring, there's not a single. Well, you pull up the awards. Tayton Connerway, he's in the portal. Obina, I'm gonna butcher this. Sorry,
Killen.
Oh yeah, that one. He's graduating. He's a grad student from what I saw. He had 5 years, and maybe I could be wrong. Fact check me on this if I'm wrong, because with the eligibility rules and COVID-19, I have no idea how college eligibility works anymore. But
no one does.
Yeah, so but newcomer of the year, Mark Freeman, he's graduating. Bryce Lindsey, freshman and 6th man of the year, he's in the portal already. The only person that's coming back, first team, second team, third team, they're all in the portal or graduating. The only person that's coming back is Richie Riley, head coach of the year from South Alabama. It's that is the only person that is coming back, and I think it's a huge blow to the conference. And if I'm honest, and I'm going to speculate here, this is me speculating. I have no basis for this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Richie Riley were to take a new job. Honestly, with what just happened with the NIT, it could be the perfect storm. He ripped the NIT. He could be looking at this and saying, I put in 7 years here. I've got 3 20-win seasons. I've done the work on my end, and there are 2 head coaching jobs in the Mountain West in Colorado State and New Mexico that need to be filled. I would, if I was Richie Kelly, I would at least take those calls or make some calls. This is complete speculation, but this could be one of the biggest. I don't know that this has ever happened before, that you've had that not a single player on an all conference honoree list, not a single player comes back for any conference, and it might have happened. I can't think of it.
Yeah, I would think I'd be hard pressed to think it's ever happened before. Zach, do you have any idea if it's something like that?
I believe it's happened to one other conference this year.
Oh wow!
I believe the MAC, not the Midwest MAC, the Northeast MAC.
Okay, the MAAC.
Yes, right? I believe everyone. If I'm not mistaken, maybe there's 1 or 2 guys left, but pretty much everyone from their award teams are gone.
Is that the conference that includes like Manhattan? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've seen some players come into the Sun Belt from that conference. So if these power programs are going to steal from us, we have to steal from somewhere else. And so, I don't know how much of a jump it is from the MAAC to the Sun Belt, but there's at least a few players who have done it. So a step up in maybe some stadiums, some fan bases, especially. But I think they're probably a pretty prominent basketball conference as far as, getting a 1-bid league. I think that's kind of probably the same across the board for that aspect. Again, like you said, TJ, we probably won't break into every little thing here, but we'll just jump through team by team just for the look's sake so that people can get an appreciation for just how much some of these teams are going to be losing. As we know, the conference as a whole losing a ton. And a note that I heard this morning, and Zach, you can give us some detail too, but as of about 9 o'clock this morning, I think it was the time frame I was hearing it, over 1,100 players currently in the portal. It's probably over 1,200 now because it's been, almost a whole day since then. But that's just a ridiculous number, and obviously seems even more ridiculous when you're still playing postseason basketball, right? I mean, I know you kind of have to get into that portal so that you have some time to make some decisions and talk to some people. But Zach, you had a statistic. I think you had a percentage of how many D1 players jumped into the portal on the very first day.
I mean, I looked up how many. So I didn't really look up, but I went there's 13 scholarship players for each team. And then I also said okay, each team might have a few walk-ons. So I said, let's say 2 walk-ons per team. So that's 15 players. And I did the math, and it's I think close to 5,500 players in Division I basketball. So like you said, 1,100 this morning. So that's already 20% of Division I basketball players in the portal.
Insanity. Ben saying Connerway declared for the NBA draft and not in the portal.
Both
based off his Instagram, apparently.
No, he's testing the waters, but he also entered the portal.
Yeah, 24/7 has him in the portal, but either way, he's looking at leaving. So right. I think that that's my main point is just it's sad for these programs that basically that's why I'm going to just say right now, I have no predictions for next year. I'm just putting that out there. There's nothing I can predict. We're looking at 14 completely different squads next year. Yeah. I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I put it together just as an exercise, and I did list 1 to 14, but yeah, I probably won't even go through all of it because, like you said, it's literally throwing something that's not even sticky at a wall and hoping it sticks because there's just no chance you get these things right? Like it's just ridiculous. But yeah, I think
Coastal
to your point,
wins the Sun Belt. That's all.
There you go.
Hell yeah.
To your point with Conway, he can put his name in the hat for the NBA if he doesn't hire an agent. Is that still how it works? Is to everyone's understanding? If you don't hire an agent and they don't say that they have enough interest, then you don't get punished for that. You can come back and play more college basketball. Is that right? Yeah.
Once you hire an agent, I'm pretty sure you're in the draft.
Even with NIL,
that's a good point. So it might be a little different. So that's a good point. but
Yeah.
maybe, I mean, there's obviously some paperwork that's due by certain dates and stuff.
True. Well, to touch on this one that's in front of us, 3 players, and Zach, again, update me if I'm wrong, but last look, I think the 3 players was correct on this one for the Cajuns. Hassana Katinge, unfortunately, it looked like he had put out a tweet or Instagram post that kind of seemed like he might be coming back. And then within a day or two, Zach, he kind of flipped the script and officially put out his I'm in the transfer portal post. Respect my decision, right? Is that everyone's famous saying for these things these days?
Yeah, I bleed Louisiana. I'm a Raging Cajun forever. All that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you leave.
Yep. Karan Davis was a pretty good player for Louisiana this year, was he not?
He was for the first, I think he played 7 games, and then I believe he got suspended from the team.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah.
I was knowing that he was a name that was coming to my head very easily. And I think now remembering that whole situation, that's probably why he was pumping into my head there. So 3 players, Chancellor White also included on that from Louisiana. And again, not to say some of these guys can't come back. Some of these are just going out there, testing the water, seeing if they get an offer. And if they don't, maybe the team opens them or welcomes them back with open arms. We don't know. We did see it happen a little bit last year with CJ Huntley actually was in the portal for App State and then came back after for whatever reason. That might have been a personal thing. I know one of his old high school teammates came up the mountain to play with him, so maybe that was enough to keep him around. But we'll see what happens across the board. But look at that. The team that went dancing, not unscathed here. I was struggling to find that word, but yeah, 4 of these guys at least, including the Rigsby brothers, Jackson Fields, and of course, as both of these guys I think already mentioned, Tayton Connerway, former Mr. 6-Man of the Year, and now Sunbelt Player of the Year. He will not have a reigning Sunbelt Player of the Year, unfortunately. Zach, still 4 or more Troy players entered the portal thus far?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. So just those 4, but those are 4 big players, all 4 starters in their tournament game. So
24/7 must be dropping the ball. I'm off on all of these so far. I've got 2 for Troy, Connerway and Fields, but all right. I'm gonna let y'all do your thing. You guys have more. You guys have more up to date information than I do.
Yeah, that's why we brought Zach. It's you coastal guys are strong with the basketball presence, so I had to get somebody that knew what the heck they're talking about, and Zach's been our go-to guy all season long. So, and what's great about Zach and everyone who's been watching and paying attention throughout the season has seen and heard this. This guy isn't just a plethora of Sunbelt basketball information. He's watching stuff across the entire country, totally in tune with the basketball scene. So there is a rhyme and a reason for Mr. Zach Capps running his own Twitter account. For those that aren't following Sunbelt Report, definitely do that because he's literally the first person sharing a lot of these ones for the Sunbelt. So there you go. These are his graphics that you're seeing on the screen now if you're watching this one. Unfortunately, Troy not unscathed there. USM, maybe surprisingly to me anyway, only with 4 players in the transfer portal. I think they had a couple graduate, though. Maybe that's playing a little bit of a role here as well as Corbello being kicked off. Although Corbello would have been a senior anyway, right, Zach? I mean, he would have
he was gone either way. Yeah.
Okay. Any surprises here? I think you talked about Christian Watson, or was that another conversation I had seen on Twitter talking about his role in the team last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I put out the post, obviously you were tagging it, so you saw the comments, but I think someone said he can leave. He's got terrible shot decisions or something like that. But I mean, that's the biggest loss. That's a guy that started almost every game and played nearly 30 minutes.
Yeah. And he's how tall is that guy? He's huge, isn't he?
6'7".
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there's taller guys in basketball, but we don't see a ton of 6'7" guys that are real successful at moving the ball around and shooting in the Sun Belt. So for his size, it's be interesting to see where he may end up. Who would take a chance on a guy with his size being a pretty big component of what they do moving forward. App State also with 4 players. I think Dior Connors being the biggest surprise here, maybe, or is it Jamil Mutlib?
I mean, Yeah, I mean, you watched probably a little bit more App State than me, but Dior Connors was probably the biggest one out of these four. Played the most minutes, scored the most points. But yeah, I mean, like I said, you probably watched more App State basketball than me this year.
Yeah, I think Jamil was coming on strong with some 3-point attempts towards the end of the season. Kind of was heating up in that sense. But you're right. I mean, Connors was a guy everybody was leaning towards next season to kind of really have more of a breakout year and a bigger role. So definitely, again, it's not impossible some of these guys come back, but when there's 4 of them in there, the likelihood that even one returns is probably a little slim. Any thoughts on App State there, TJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising to me, App State in particular, just what they've been able to do and keep their players around in recent years. So seeing 4 in the portal, following suit with the rest of the conference, it was a shock.
Yeah, I was surprised. Just touching back on that, what we already talked about, I was surprised they did so well in the regular season this year. I mean, I think you and I, along with everybody else, once your team is to a certain point, you get disappointed. But my preseason outlook for App State was 9th in the conference. They got decimated. Their entire team entered the portal after last season. So I didn't know where to put them. So I put them as a massive drop. But obviously, 2 games towards the end of the season go a little bit differently. They're talking about possibly being a top 4 seed in the conference. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens because it's kind of not quite as bad this year, but a little surprised that many guys entering the portal after a pretty successful season overall, not knowing what they had coming in. ODU, only 4 in the portal. I would say probably Caesar is kind of the biggest surprise for me here, Zach.
I mean, that's 3 guys in the portal, and Jared Turner committed to ODU.
Oh, I see. That's right.
Yeah, he's from Northeastern. Yeah, from Northeastern. Career, I think 42% 3-point shooter over 2 years. Average 8 points a game over his career. So solid ad. But yeah, I would say Devin Caesar, probably the biggest loss. Danny Pounds I really liked him his freshman year, but I mean, with the new staff, he kind of fell out of favor and didn't play much.
And that's kind of stuff is bound to happen. So that's one reason for sure that I'm okay with player movement. I don't think it's a bad thing overall to allow these players to do these types of things. It's just disappointing when you want to know something about your team going into the next year. You want to have, your fan favorites stick around, be on the team so that you can, feel like you really know these guys and move forward with them as a whole. All right. South Alabama, as we talked about with Richie Riley, kind of getting screwed out of the postseason. I would say Barry Dunning Jr. and Miles Corey are the 2 big losses here, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Miles Corey, that's a guy that me and you said that was probably the conference player of the year halfway through the season. Yeah. And then he kind of had a rough stretch in the conference play, but Barry Dunning took over. So those are 2 massive losses. They're 2 leading scorers. Yeah.
And I think
2 all Sun Belt honorees as well.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Is the Caleb and Ethan, are they twins or are they brothers?
Just brothers.
Just brothers. Okay. And it seems like I don't know. I think I saw someone say something about Ethan saying that he was kind of a promising prospect in a sense. I don't know if they were both thought of that or what, but didn't see the floor that much for South Alabama this year, if my understanding was correct on that.
Yeah, that's correct. But Ethan Kaiser, I mean, I went to the South Alabama Coastal game this year. That dude can jump out the gym. Really? So, I mean, I know he didn't get much production, so a lot of people might be thinking like he might go to a lower level just because he didn't play much at South Alabama. But I think with his athleticism, he has a chance to still stay Division I, maybe even like Sun Belt level type of conference.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many of these players move within their own conference. They saw somebody, a guy that they know a little bit, talks them into coming over. So those kind of storylines going into next season could be pretty interesting if they come to fruition. All right, your guys' team here, Coastal Carolina. I'm showing 5 following you, Zach, but again, you can correct me if there's any more that we're looking at here.
Missing Rasheed Jones, but he entered the portal like 2 weeks ago, so that's probably why you missed him.
Okay, gotcha. I don't know, thoughts on the biggest loss here, Denzel Hines, Jordan Battle. Amhauser,
the whole
Brown.
starting five is gone. So
Yeah,
that's the starting five plus Nas Brown, who came off the bench and averaged like 10 minutes a game. So
that's crazy. Crazy. Is that? I mean, I don't know. Is there word about why these guys are all leaving, or some of them just kind of testing to see what they can get, and they'll probably be back? Or
I mean, if you look at all these guys, almost every single one of them has been at a different college every single year of their college eligibility. So, I mean, if you really think about it that way, it's not like super shocking. But I mean, Justin Gray at Western Carolina was a coach that didn't really lose many people to the portal. Like maybe like his top two guys or would jump to the Power Five, and then maybe like his bottom two guys would go to like a lower level. But the core was pretty much the same a lot of the time he was there. So I think that's a little shocking for me, is him not keeping his guys around. But I think we said in the past on a previous show, like he got here in March, he had to put together a team quick. I mean, he didn't get a full recruiting cycle. He didn't get a full year of going out and recruiting these guys and all that stuff. So maybe that changes next year.
yeah, and was Amhauser the one he brought with him from Western?
Rasheed Jones.
Rasheed Jones was.
And then
okay.
Colin Granger was too, but he's graduating.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, TJ, we got to get your thoughts. This is your team as well, man. Thoughts on, even if you don't know great detail on some of these guys, but just overall, starting five gone, or at least seemingly gone.
No, I mean, this is just what has happened the past couple of years. I think that, towards the end of the Cliff Ellis era, it was, with the portal, that was right around the time that the portal was introduced. So you've got basically every single year you're trying to piecemeal together a team. I remember the year that I referred to before, the 2021-22 season. That year only had 3 returners. I think it was Garrick Green and 2 other players
Mustafa.
that did.
Yep.
Mustafa and one other person. So like, that's just the approach that Coastal has taken in recent years, is trying to just find the right group of guys to mesh. There's only so much you can do with that. That's not sustainable. It's not something that, it works once, with Rudy Williams and Vince Cole, but it works once. And then it's not something that you can do. You have to be a magician to do that every single year. So, hopefully Justin Gray has something up his sleeve for next season and he can start keeping some guys on campus.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see if that comes to fruition, but you're right. I mean, you can't seemingly be successful all the time flipping a whole roster around. But here's yet another good team this year, JMU, with a lot of their starters also in the portal. Xavier Brown, Bryce Lindsey being the kind of top 2 here, right, Zach?
Yep. AJ Smith as well, starter, played a bunch of minutes for him. I mean, these are a bunch of guys that will probably go high major. I mean, I retweeted a list of the schools interested in Bryce Lindsey, and it's absurd. Some of those schools like Kentucky, Maryland, Providence, St. John, like all these big schools. And I'm sure that a list somewhat similar be for Xavier Brown. So, I mean, it was kind of expected. It's kind of expected just across the board in a conference like the Sun Belt for the top guys on the teams to leave, just because they're going to get poached and get a ton of money from a big conference school who's going to not only pay them a lot, but give them a bigger opportunity to shine.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to, is the money. Because, we're talking about the portal, but they don't have the bankroll in the Sun Belt to compete with the high major basketball programs, your Kentuckys, your Dukes, your North Carolinas, even your Syracuses. These are programs that are starting to hire general managers in order to, keep all of this under, organized and everything, and get players the money that they need to get them. It sucks for the low majors and for the mid majors. The portal is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. We've seen the teams around this league have a little success with D2 when it comes to football, and we've seen some of the guys be successful. Zach, you were the one who brought up that really cool fact about where Tate and Connerway got his start. So, yeah, what you said, former walk-on JUCO player, right?
Yeah. I mean, also to TJ's point, I think revenue sharing that's coming up this year. That will help a lot. I mean, obviously, we're still not going to have the money that those big conferences are having, but at least it gives you like a floor on what a lot of these teams will have, and a lot of these teams will have a lot more money to deal with. So maybe that helps out a little bit.
Yeah. More than what they have now would be good. I'm going to make this one full screen. It looks like it's a little harder to read with the red and black probably. But yeah, A-State, another one that's going to be decimated because of the loss of the head coach. A lot of those guys, and I think, Zach, you can speak to this, at least Isaiah Nelson. I think he's the only one I saw, but he is already committed to USF, right?
So is Joseph Pinion as well.
Okay, he just did. Okay.
Actually, I just checked. I just got a notification. One of his high school recruits that was a 4-star who had offers from a lot of big schools just flipped his commitment to USF too.
Oh, wow. Well, there it is, folks. If you need any idea of what these players are doing, they're not committing to a school. They're committing to a leader and a coach who's come into their home and met their parents and won them over for what he's going to be able to do for them personally. That part I will never be upset with. I would always want to stay committed to who was committed to me. And that's not the school, right? The school's not really pulling those strings. It's the head coach who helps get you there. So that part, this is one of those situations. It's not fun for A-State to go through, but when someone gets a life-changing amount of money thrown at them, and these players that have loved and followed that guy around say they want to go and he wants to be able to bring them in, I'm never going to be upset about that. That's the one part of the portal that I'm totally cool with. Anytime a coach ups and leaves, as a player, you should do. So hopefully that's most of the time being able to follow him if that's what you want to do. But other times it might go another direction. You don't know who's coming in, so I'm getting out. Texas State, again, we kind of had that talk about possible coaching change, at least the rumor mill around the fan base existing there. Some big names here that had some pretty good success. I think Austin Green was the one I had called out for newcomer of the year. Who ended up taking home that award? I forget right now.
Newcomer of the year was Mark Freeman, James Madison.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Easy to see why, too. But, yeah, Zach, notes on any of these guys here at Texas State? Anybody missing?
I mean, Colton Benson, that's a guy that you really liked this year. Yeah. He's in the portal. Mark Drone, a guy that was a big-time JUCO recruit that had some injuries, but when he came in, he was really good. And then Josh O'Garo, who's been there for, I think this was his second year. He was a starter that left, too.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to replace all that production there for Texas State with a lot of those guys ending up at the top of their statistical categories. So we'll have to see. Oh, Ben saying that people are hating on those A-State players leaving and following. But like I just said, that's one that I'm never going to side with fans giving those guys a hard time about. I don't know about you guys, but that's not something I'm ever going to harp on.
No, I mean, I honestly, not to change subject, but just briefly, I think that speaks to the more overarching issue with the Sun Belt, which is the fact that, I'm saying this, not that it's right, not that this is the reality that has to be, but people see the mid-majors, including the Sun Belt, as the stepping stone. It's the way to get to the high major. And with that kind of mentality, you're just never going to grow as a conference and as just an athletic community where you're competing. When these programs, especially in football and baseball, they are competing and they are getting these big upset wins. So, you're seeing guys, in the beginning, beginning of this decade, you're seeing guys like in baseball, Gary Gilmore at Coastal Carolina, and you're seeing guys like Sean Elliott's been there for a very long time at Georgia State. You've got Jamie Chadwell was with Coastal for a few years, and then he took the next step. And then Kurt Signetti came in with James Madison, brought them up to FBS, and then he left. So you're not seeing that long-standing relationship with a school anymore, mainly because, like you said, with Hodgson and USF, when you get a life-changing dollar sign thrown at you, you'd have to take it. You know, you've got bills to pay, families to feed. It's not any fault of their own, but I think that there is a serious problem that Keith Gill and the Sun Belt Conference need to take over. I don't want to get too far into that, but I just wanted to say that, Hodgson, I don't think that says anything about him or the players that have committed to him. I think it says more about what needs to change when it comes to the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, and the coaching position in general, as you said with Sean Elliott there at Georgia State previously, he left a head coaching gig to take a lesser role at South Carolina, but get paid more money and have less responsibility. Why would you? I get paid more money to do less. I mean, I'll take that.
It's also just the perception. It's like, I would rather be an assistant coach for this program than be a head coach at mine. It's, that just sets off alarm bells to everybody about what the state of the Sun Belt Conference is. And that's not the case. They're winning games, especially in football. So I don't know. I digress, but that is the overarching issue, and something needs to be done. And most likely it's going to come down to money. And that's, there's no easy fix to that, but something needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely does. Ben saying people are saying Hodgson downgraded by going to USF. I won't agree with that statement, but yeah, I mean, it's disappointing, and you can understand the frustration being voiced by the A-State faithful there. All right, getting back to Georgia State, who's in front of us right now. Pretty easy here. Zareek Nutter being the biggest loss here for the Panthers, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, Malachi Brown as well. That's their starting point guard. So, and then if you look at the rest of their roster, Tenari Lane, gone. Cesar Edwards, gone. Nick McMullen, gone. The only big guy that played minutes that's come back is Jelani Hamilton. So they got a lot to do in a year that's crucial for Jonas Hayes, because he has not been particularly good at Georgia State, and he's probably on the hot seat going in next year.
There you go. There's another one that we can list. That one, Texas State. We'll see. Maybe Ladner at USM being on a hot seat as well. Yeah, very interesting. A lot of storylines that we will be able to touch on during the offseason and going into next year. ULM, again, this one's not going to be a big surprise. Probably a lot of these guys had decided they were going to enter the portal before they even knew who the new head coach was. So this one, again, not really shocking. I don't know. Is there anybody that specifically stands out to you that will be a pretty big addition for somebody here, Zach?
No, I mean, I think all these guys probably end up at another mid-major like the Sun Belt. I don't think any of these guys are going to go to a Power 5 school and be really good there. But, hey, they do have – ULM does have Wiggy Ball coming in, so watch out.
Yeah, what would we say? Immediate first-team Sun Belt all-name team.
That might be the name of the year. That might be the player of the year.
It might be, man. That's just a great quality name. So we'll have to see. But yeah, that one's, again, a little less surprising on how many people entering the portal there. This one shocked me. I was not prepared to see this many people. And I think you said I even missed some for Georgia Southern because they might have declared earlier. But we have a full screen here. There is no open space, no gaps. Their roster, I think I counted it. I think they had 15 on their roster to start the season. I'm not sure if that's what they ended with as well. There's 10 people on the screen right now, and if you said I might have missed one or two, you're talking about flipping an entire roster from start to finish going into next season. This is crazy. Tell us more about what you can about the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a shock for all of us. I mean, no coaching change. No, none of that stuff, but their whole team's gone. They bring back, as of now, they're bringing back two guys, Nicavian White and Tyson Brown, who I don't even know if Tyson Brown's going to come back, but with the eligibility ruling with all non-Division I athletes get an extra year, he gets extra. So that means he gets a fifth year. So, but he doesn't have to use it. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if anything comes out about why this is happening at Georgia Southern, because it's a pretty big shock. Yeah,
definitely. Question from Ben here. Wanted to see where you got the Rashawn King from A-State being in the portal.
Who reported it? Me.
Boom. I bet you Zach has cell phone number of King, and he's like, "Hey, man."
I mean, verbal commits. Verbalcommits.com is like the number one place to look to see if anyone entered the portal. It's like automated. So like as soon as someone enters the portal, it's like updated on their website. And they also send out tweets as well. Like every single time someone enters the portal or when someone commits or gets an offer or any of that stuff. So that's a perfect website.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, like I said, I've been wrong on all of these in terms of the amount, but I also have Rashawn King. So 24/7 is behind, but it seems like this one's true.
Nice. Staying on top of it. You guys are over there. Zach specifically, like 3 cell phones. Like, oh, okay, someone's just here. He's getting the information on one.
He's getting texts from SIDs, and he's.
I wish.
He's Adam Schefter on trade deadline day.
I was trying to think of Schefter's name and I was going blank on it, but that's exactly what I'm picturing Zach doing over there, right in front of the computer. Just got the computer going, got this phone going, always up to date on everything. So
I mean, also I like pre-write like pretty much all these tweets in the graphics. Right? So like as soon as it happens, I basically just press send, or as soon as I can, I just press send. So I mean, it's not like I'm getting the information like 2 days ago and then or 2 days early and then posting it. I also wait until like either they make a post or it's official or the papers have been submitted. I'm not the guy, at least yet, that is gonna break some news like days early.
So just curious, you say you do these in advance. So do you make one for every single player and then pick and choose?
Yeah, I started like when the teams were losing in the conference tournament, I just went team by team every single day. And then towards the end, I was just like, I'm tired of this. Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
That's dedication.
I'll just wait until they enter the portal. But I mean, it definitely has helped if you pre-do it. So then you can just press send rather than spending another 10 minutes of making a graphic.
That's dedication.
I mean, a lot of these too, I can just like the app I use, I can just replace like the name and then the background picture. So like, it's not like I'm like going like inch by inch, like putting the Georgia Southern logo on and then like all that stuff. So that makes it a lot easier as well.
Yeah, but it's that age-old thing. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, right? So it's perfect, man. It's like TJ said, that's dedication to your craft, and it's easy to see why you are a Sun Belt and basketball expert along the way. Okay, so we've talked about we won't go 1 through 14 here, but this is kind of the last exercise as far as Sun Belt stuff goes. A way too early predictions for next year. I'll just start off because I at least have someone I feel pretty probably 3 programs I feel pretty strongly about, even with some of the players in the portal and whatnot. I think JMU, Marshall, and Troy are the ones I feel comfortable and confident saying should be towards the very top of this conference next season. Marshall is probably the most confidence I'm backed by right now with where they finished the season, the run that they were having. Obviously, they lose a couple important pieces with Chillin. Man, now I'm stumbling over it, TJ. I was good on that most of the season, but haven't said it in a while, so I butchered it all over. But yeah, a couple big losses for each one of those teams still. But I just think the coaches there are good. The atmosphere within those arenas is good. The fan following and the fact that they're going to be able to bring in some more quality players is also good. We've talked about it a couple times. Scott Cross was his 4th 20-win season in a row here. Obviously capped with an NCAA tournament run. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's going to get some players to come into that program even after a couple of them leave this year. And JMU, I expect, them to do even better than they did this past year. I'm assuming they'll have some pretty good transfers come into that program and revitalize it after a couple of those guys jump up to higher major teams maybe. Let's go with Zach next.
This is like impossible to pick. Like all these teams are going to have like 9-10 new players. But I mean, as of right now, I'm sure we'll get into it like sometime during the off season when we get a better understanding of the rosters. But like you said, Marshall, I think they just returned probably some of the most in the conference. They lose Dawson, Anachili Killen, and Martin, but pretty much everyone else is back. So that's a team. ODU, I actually think, just because they have the most guys returning. Like, it's hard to pick any other team when they don't have guys returning. So, and then Robert Davis just announced he's coming back. That's a big time. And then they added the transfer from Northeastern as well. And then, like you said, Troy. I mean, I just trust Troy at this point. I mean, as you know, I'm from Indiana. I'm a Purdue fan, but they're kind of like Purdue. Like, I mean, they're going to be a steady 20, 25 win team almost every year, no matter what happens. Their coach and that staff is going to find a way to make something work.
Yeah, I like that. I agree with you. ODU is a good one to shout out too. I have them in again, it was kind of an exercise of stupidity if you really did 1 to 14 like I did, but I had ODU making a pretty big jump up to that 4 or 5 region almost. So we'll see if they are capable of doing it. Again, TJ, I know you said you didn't throw anything out on actual paper there maybe, but just some thoughts on some teams you think might be towards the top next year.
Like I said, I literally have nothing. As soon as when I counted 30 conference-wide transfers, that's when I stopped counting and I stopped caring about next year's predictions. I'm just keeping it 100% honest with the audience. I did not do any predictions. If I had to pick 2 teams, I mean, Zach picked them already, JMU and Marshall, mainly due to the fact that 2 years ago when they entered the conference and there was all that uncertainty, they came in and made a lot of noise. And those are 2 programs. Marshall kept a lot of people. JMU, I like what they have going on over there. So if I have to pick, which I really don't want to, I'll pick those 2. But my true prediction is there's going to be 5 brand new players on the all Sun Belt first team next year.
You go. I like that.
That's my pick. I will put money on it. I'll do you one better. There's going to be 15 new players on the first, second, and third teams. I'll put my life savings on it because it's going to happen.
There you go. There you go. I love it. That is that's a great little statistic and future bet that you could definitely win money on.
I'll double up. I already know I'm going to win.
Oh man. Well, that's really all I have. I think we all have for Sunbelt, but any thoughts on who's taking home this NCAA March Madness tournament championship here this year? I know Zach's the Purdue fan here, but who else we thinking's got a real shot at taking home this trophy and whatever else comes along with that?
I mean, I'll go with Duke. They're just, I think, overall the best team. They got the best player in the country, several other first-round picks, veterans. Like, they did a really good job this year. And then, obviously, I got to say Purdue. Like, I have to. I have no choice. They're playing in Indy for the Sweet 16 Elite 8. So, like, it's basically a home court game.
Stop on there for a minute, though. Have you seen the setup? I've seen so many people very upset that they're playing this in such a big football stadium that doesn't have any business hosting a basketball tournament.
So that's how the tournament was.
Have they seen the Final Four, like, ever?
Yeah, that's true.
But it's different. So the court's in the end zone, and then they put a black curtain up through the middle. So they're only opening like 40,000 seats. But that's how the tournament was in 2021 when it was all in Indianapolis. I went to a bunch of games at Lucas Oil Stadium when it was just like the setup they have now. And it's actually not that bad. Like, I kind of enjoyed it. Maybe that's a little bit of nostalgia, just going to a bunch of tournament games, but it wasn't that bad. But, yeah, they have the high school state championships at the Pacers arena. So that's why they can't do it there, but they should. I talked with some of my friends. They should have just moved that to Hinkle Fieldhouse where Butler plays. Yeah. And then, that's a historic venue. That's another once in a lifetime opportunity to play in Hinkle Fieldhouse. I know playing in NBA arena is probably even closer to once in a lifetime, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. You would think that, I don't know, there's probably parents of high schoolers that are like, yeah, I would want to see my kid play here, which would be kind of a cool thing. TJ, what's, before we get your thoughts on your teams, what's a stadium or venue you've been to that was pretty awesome?
Yeah, it's such a easy answer. And Cameron Indoor. I sat on the court doing photos last year. It was, and I'll tell you what, there's only 10,000 seats in that place. Not even 10,000 seats. They packed 10,000 people in there, but it is one heck of a place to go. And then of course there's always State Farm Stadium for the Final Four last year. That was another great venue, but I'd probably give it to Cameron with the college significance.
Did you get to go into the little Hall of Fame area that they have kind of connected to the stadium as well too?
Yeah, I always try to, when I'm out there or when I'm at a new venue, I always try and check out the when it's empty. I look around so that I'm not bothering anybody, but I want to take in some of the history. It's just, it feels like, I don't know, for those of you who've been to Disney World, right? Like that's what it feels like. It is the Disney World of college basketball. It just has this magic about it. And, you look at it from the inside and there's only 10,000 capacity, and it is just, it doesn't make any difference. It is a magical place.
Nice.
That's coming from a Notre Dame fan. We do not like Duke. Okay. We don't like them, but that is a crazy place. And the people I interacted with were incredible down there. So shout out to Duke.
I mean, I'll go a little bit with what he's saying. Like, obviously I think my dream place would be Cameron Indoor, obviously, but nice. I think a second or maybe like third is Mackey Arena. I know Purdue is obviously my team, but that place, like TJ said, just walking in that place, it just has a feel about it. You just walk into it and it's the game feels different. Even if it's Purdue versus, like I went Purdue versus Toledo this year, like that game felt big. Like it's just the feeling, the history in those stadiums. There's nothing that can match like a college venue like that.
I like it.
I'll also give a special shout out to the JMA Dome in Syracuse. It is an interesting experience watching a basketball game, but that's a great place to watch.
Is that one where they also do like the shielded half thing to kind of cut it off there?
Kind of. They roll one end zone worth of bleachers down, and they'll put it in the end zone and kind of like enclose it. I think it's like, I want to say it's like 24,000, 25,000 capacity for basketball. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, I mean, that's Big East basketball, baby. They are a founding member.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's insane to think that like we have member institutions in this conference that can't put 2,000 people, sometimes not even 1,000 people in the stands for some of our games. And there's teams around the country put in 20 or close to 20 or over 20. I mean, on a regular basis too. It's just
HTC
insane.
Center, baby.
Yeah. Ben says he wants to go to Bristol Motor Speedway for a football game. That's the one. It's too much of a stretch for me. Like you're way too far away from the field. I've seen the setup. It's just, I mean, if you're going, go for the party. Cause I've gone to an outdoor hockey game. Okay. The sight lines are usually terrible. You can't hear, like hockey's all about hearing guys crunch along the boards, hearing the puck bounce off the post, sticks slamming into the glass. When you're that far away in a football field or baseball field where they've played some of these, you don't get any of that ambiance or atmosphere. Yeah. So some of these big venues just to have the numbers game, you can miss me with that.
I'll just straight out say it. I don't think that we should play sports on fields that weren't built for those sports. That's just my personal opinion. I hate watching football games in baseball stadiums. I don't care if Syracuse and Pitt play at Yankee Stadium. Why can't you play at the JMA Dome or in Pittsburgh where you're supposed to play? Actually get a good view of the game. That's just, that might be a hot take, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I think it's not even too much of a hot, especially for the three of us, because you guys just called out Cameron as like your number one thing. There's nothing special about how many seats are in there, right? That's the least special thing about it. The special thing is how it feels. It's an intimate setting, kind of how you're supposed to be for basketball. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I've gotten lucky enough to be there once, and the only thing that's shocking to me is like it gets so hot, and I heard that. Like it wasn't a surprise, but
it's so hot.
It's just incredible how hot it gets in there. Because it was freezing. I mean, it was like almost, it could have, if it was precipitating outside when I went, it would have been snowing. That's how cold it was. But you walk in there and you're immediately like, all right, everything's off except for what I have to have on pretty much.
And it's not for lack of trying either. It's
Right.
they pump the AC in there. And when we stayed after to do our stand-ups in front of the camera, ice cold. And we had to like throw layers back on. But when everybody's packed in there like sardines, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I also think it's the way these like old stadiums are built too. They're not modern ventilated. They're like literally like wood walls and wood ceilings. So it's that heat gets trapped in there real quick.
Yeah. Oh, and I can tell you that the seats are not modern at all. They are very much teeny tiny seats. I am not a very wide guy, luckily, but 6'2", 200 pounds still struggled to fit in the seat that I was supposed to be sitting in. So it is not accommodating for the modern human being even. But people still go, and it's all about the atmosphere when you're in those places. So phenomenal stuff there. And I definitely agree with everything you guys had said.
I'm a relatively big guy, and doing photos with the first row's knees in your back is completely not an experience. It's not an experience I'd do again. I'd go there and sit in a chair. I would not sit on the court again.
Yeah,
that's a little man's job.
Yeah, that's the one thing about basketball that always astounds me is how close they let all those people get. I mean, I know you have to be that close to get the good shots and all that, but it's just crazy that like these are massive human beings who are flying literally in the air and get bumped, and they don't have control and everything. And you're right. I mean, they're falling in your lap. I mean, it's just insane that they
half the time you're looking for the good shot. The other half of the time you're looking to not die because you've got this gigantic human being coming down the lane and tripping over somebody. It is scary. Honestly, it's even scarier for football in the end zone. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah. Cause those guys are padded. So at least they're
not going to feel it. I'm going to feel it.
Yeah. For days and days. Oh man. Okay. This is another random one, but since Ben asked it, you guys have favorite NBA teams?
I mean,
his is the Memphis Grizzlies, so he'll start us off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really watch the NBA as much as I used to. Just watching other sports more, but mine is Boston Celtics. I mean, yeah, just family grew up. I had some close family grow up in that area. Both of my childhood best friends are Celtics fans, so it was just like meant to be.
Nice.
TJ? I am not an NBA fan at all. I am specifically the 2011-2012 New York Knicks fan. That is very specific. That particular year, the one with I think that's the one with Linsanity, Tyson Chandler, Amari Stoudemire, Melo. Like I like that team. I'm not really an NBA fan.
Yeah, I'll agree with you full-heartedly. Well, I guess kind of both of you. Not an NBA fan whatsoever. I always give the NBA a hard time, actually. College basketball, yes, we're getting away from some of the pureness with the NIL and the portal. However, like the game-to-game experience is still intimate enough where they're not playing rap music as these guys dribble down the court. Rap music, pop. I'm not mad about the rap music. I like that genre of music, so that's not the aspect. But like, it's just so pop culturalized. I don't even know what word I'm trying to look for there, but it's just not. It doesn't feel like sport. It feels like Globetrotters, right? Like it's just so much going on while the run of play is happening. Like, no, focus on the play on the court. So I just don't get into the NBA. Not a big fan.
I'll piss some people off. I think that the argument I hear a lot where I'm a diehard college fan. If I have to pick between professional and college sports, I'm watching college all day long. And people will tell me all the time, but there's so much parity in professional sports. Like those are the best people in the world at what they do. And it's literally just, they're going head to head and it's full tilt. And I'm like, I don't want parity. I want an entertaining product. I want the story of, I'll make you happy, App State beating Michigan back in 2007. Was that 2007?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I want that story where any team can beat any team on any day. Like I want to hear the story of the kid on the sideline who just got his leg blown off on the last play. He's hobbling up to the coach, hopping on one leg, looking to get back in next play.
Yeah.
Load management, and like, I can't blame them for that because they're worth millions of dollars, but give me the college team that nobody expects anything of. I'll root for them all day long.
Yeah. I think that's well, there's the last thing we'll touch on. Ben is also saying he used to be a LeBron fan, but not anymore. I'm actually a LeBron guy. Like I like how he plays the game and all that, but I don't like the diving stuff. You know, the pre-Madonna stuff. I'm not a big fan of. But let's talk about that. So no more mid majors left. They're all gone. So is that more of an anomaly of like maybe this year, or is that kind of the future as we think we're going to see it here?
I think it's probably going to be the future, honestly. I honestly probably think it's going to be the future with NIL, with the transfer portal, with these conferences, just like the SEC and the Big Ten. Those are like the two like conferences where everyone wants to be. So like, I mean, I think those two conferences eventually, I'm not saying next 10 years, next 20 years, but I think eventually those two are just going to run everybody over and just completely run college sports eventually. And yeah, I mean, like I said, NIL, I mean, all these mid-major teams are just getting completely bought out by these high major teams. And you can't blame anybody. You can't blame the school. Like you have to blame the NCAA for not enforcing rules or not making rules. But I saw like some graphic. It was like Belmont. If Belmont had they have like 5 guys starting in the Sweet 16 that are like obviously like on these big schools. Like Belmont could be like 30, 40 years ago, Belmont would be absolutely insane right now with a starting 5 of teams or guys that potential NBA guys. But like I said, just they're getting bought out. And you can't blame anyone. You can't blame the players for taking the money, and you can't blame the schools for handing them out. You got to blame the NCAA for first of all, not making any rules and then not enforcing them. Well, they did make rules, and then they roll over when they get sued. They just roll over like it's nothing. So I mean, it's not really hard to win a case against the NCAA. But then it's just the Wild West at that point.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. TJ.
I mean, when I was preparing to do the show and I was getting ready to answer this question, my original response was going to be, as long as Mark Few's at Gonzaga, it's an anomaly. But I have to go back to my original thing that I said earlier. This is a mindset issue for the way that the Sun Belt is perceived and the way that mid-majors are perceived in the era of NIL and the portal. They can't compete with the checkbooks right now. They can't compete with the facilities, even the capacities of stadiums, sometimes even the amount of enrolled students at their school. So like it is, I think that the mid-majors especially need to take a different mindset when it comes to scheduling for all sports, scheduling their out of conference games. And they need to really focus on, like you think about football, most Sunbelt schools, they'll do 1 paid game. They'll do 2 mid-major games from other conferences, and then they'll do an FCS game because you get one of those and it counts. I think that somebody needs to just try it once and schedule 3 powerhouses and just see what happens. Get paid. Use it as a recruiting tool. Like, we're playing these 3 schools. We win one of these games and we're going to be the G5 representative in the NY6. That's just kind of what needs to happen. Something needs to change. I'm not the guy with the answers. The Sun Belt is seen as a stepping stone for not just players, but also coaches. It was huge. Like, you guys realize how huge it was that Grayson McCall stayed at the Sun Belt level for 4 years. Like, it was huge for the conference. It's a 4-time player of the year, a 3-time player of the year. Never happened before at the Sun Belt level to have that kind of guy there. He ran, pretty much the awards for 3 straight years. He had a tough senior year, but that's the stuff you don't see anymore. You see guys have a really good year like Bryce Lindsey. I have nothing against Bryce Lindsey. This is the state of college basketball. You got to work your way back up. He has a great year in his freshman year, and he's gone. And that's just the way it is right now. So I think that the Sun Belt needs to just have this mindset of like, we want to be the gritty conference. We want those big games. We want to try and win those big games. Like, repeat the App State at Texas A&M, the Marshall at Notre Dame, and something just needs to click with these coaches, these players, get some funding, and things will follow suit. But I'm rambling at this point. It's something just needs to change.
Well, I think
for all mid-majors.
I also think with like the scheduling, at least, it's just harder because these top schools don't want to play us because they don't want to lose. So like obviously we want to go play them because one, we get paid, two, better prepares us for the conference and maybe what we see in March. But these schools don't want to play us because we look at James Madison and Michigan State last year. Michigan State, Tom Izzo came after the game and said, I knew we were scheduling a hard team, a good team, James Madison. And then James Madison walked in there and won. And then Tom Izzo was like, yeah, I knew that was going to be a tough game, and I'm never doing that again. Like, I'm never scheduling a tough game like that again. So, like, it's just the high majors also want to save their face a little bit. So it's just hard.
At that point, that in my opinion, and I've met Keith Gill, and I think he's a great guy. That falls on the commissioner's office to get up there and get on your soapbox and say, we don't care if you want to save face. Like, we want these games and we want to compete. And if you're not willing to compete, like, stir the pot a little bit. If you're not willing to compete, then you don't deserve to be called the power conferences. If you're too scared to come down to this level that you call the group of five, like, no, you need to force them to take these games. And you're going to take your lumps early on, but eventually you're going to start to build a culture, and eventually you're going to get guys to stick around. And then you're going to have the stories of the 2020 Coastal Carolina, the 2023 James Madisons, and it's going to happen a lot more often. But it just needs to start with someone needs to drop the mic.
Yeah. Like you said, I think I agree with you, but like I said, the Michigan States, if they schedule a James Madison, and they lose, that's a bad loss on their record. But if they schedule an Ole Miss and they lose, that's still a good loss on their record. But that goes with what you're saying. Like, if we as a conference are scheduling better, then it makes our conference look better. So that James Madison loss to Michigan State doesn't look as bad in the future. So it's you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it is a group effort. This needs to be a conference-wide thing. This can't just be one school in the Sun Belt. This needs to be the conference coming together and saying, we want to schedule more difficult opponents and basically take the Mountain West approach to things. Like I said earlier with the Mountain West, in basketball, they go and they play tough teams. They do basically the opposite of what Brad Brownell says the Big 12 does with the net rankings and manipulating the system. They do the opposite. They do really tough out of conference games, and they beat up on each other in the conference schedule because they are prepared. They're ready to go, and it's really entertaining. Let's make the Sun Belt fun again, and let's get some big names in there. I know Coastal Carolina's got South Carolina coming in this year. I saw the comment at the bottom of the screen. Iowa State's coming to A-State this year, so keep going with that. And start forcing these power conferences to give us a shot.
Yeah, and then that doesn't just go for football. This
goes
is
for
even
everything.
more important for basketball because we have a ton of basketball teams that almost have no other choice. They have to go play these NAIA schools and these Division II schools because these other teams won't give them a shot, which in one regard, you understand, as you guys had alluded to, you can't lose to them. We got nothing to gain by beating this team. The downside is they're almost correct because in the RPI and the net game, it doesn't do anything for them. But again, as Zach said too, I think, maybe both you said it, you got to start somewhere. So yeah, you're going to take your lumps and get beat up a little bit if you start scheduling heavy hitters from start to finish more across the conference. But guess what? Those are also the games that your recruits want to come play. So that it's not a bad thing. I think you can't be scared of it. And like you said, TJ, I like what you said about Keith Gill kind of spearheading that, maybe come out with a statement officially, stir the pot a little bit. We haven't seen that from him. I don't think that's going to change, right? Because he's kind of taken his stance. But, we'll see what happens in the future. Because like you said, something's got to change for us to, especially at the basketball level. We just did this whole show about basketball. It's a big deal here. That's where it needs the most work. Football's decently positioned. Okay. Could change quite quickly. Baseball, pretty well positioned, actually, if you ask me, because luckily with the regionality of the Sun Belt, where it's located within the United States, we can really host a lot of big name schools early on in the season that can't play their own games at home, right? So
it's a top 3 or 4 baseball conference on any given year.
Yeah, exactly. I think this year, unfortunately, we look a little down with our top 3 really being good, and then everybody else is kind of mediocre so far. So we'll see if we can kind of round at least 1 or 2 more teams into form and maybe sneak a 4th team into the regional somehow. But I think those top 3 should be looking pretty good. I guess we talk now about everything, literally football, basketball, baseball. So you guys got any further notes to share before we get out of here?
I just want to follow up on last episode and say I, for one, am a big proponent of the new Sun Belt tournament. That's just me. That's my opinion. Troy Boys had some stuff to say about it. I think it's a great idea to force a bottom tier team to win 7 games in 7 days in order to get that day. If they've done that, you deserve it. But that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to try and fit that in at some point.
No, I agree with you. I think I kind of had that stance with you. Like, if you're going to change the tournament, then just don't invite as many teams. You same structure, just 6 of them or something. But if you want to include all of them, make it difficult. You don't get rewarded for being the worst team in the conference throughout the regular season, and then be like, well, we have to play 7 in a row. Yeah, you're right. You do. Because if
it's nuts, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Mortal Kombat style tournament is what I saw someone refer it to. So I love it. But this was awesome. We're going to do more of this stuff going forward. Obviously, a little less frequently now that basketball season is officially over. But you will see these guys hanging around with us much more often. And can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.